northern Germany, I said, why? Now I understand. Oliver, this is the most incredibly impressive place, and I'm amazed. You've outdone everybody in the world on this. Really impressive. Thank you. So I've been very fortunate because I've done 8 cup campaigns with Bill, and that probably speaks to my intellect that I even did 8, although there is a man in the audience that's done 11, so I'm not the shortest on the intellect. So I'm a little worried about Bill today because on his way over on the plane, he was so excited about this event, he leaned over to his wife, Crystal, and said, Crystal, in your wildest dreams, did you ever imagine I'd be inducted into the Hall of Fame? And Crystal sort of thought about it for a sec and looked at Bill and said, you're not even in my wildest dreams. Sorry, Bill. So how I got started was in 1979, Dennis Conner asked me to be his trial skipper. And the first thing he asked me to do is go learn how to sail a 12-meter, by the way, by yourself in May in Newport, Rhode Island, when it's cold, and when I say by myself, with people that hadn't sailed on a 12-meter very often and with no tender. So we sailed away from the docks in quite a bit of breeze. And the very first day I went sailing, I had Bill Trenkle and 4 other cadets on the boat. It was a very foggy day, so we decided to go north underneath the bridge. For those of you that know Newport, there's a big bridge there, and if you go north, it's a little safer. So the first thing that happens is we put up a spinnaker, we get going about 12 knots, and all of a sudden it gets really foggy and you can't see anything. And one of the cadets runs forward to do something and falls overboard. It wasn't Bill. But Bill was at the mast, and he was the guy that sort of took charge when this happened. And I knew at 20 years old, this was a guy that could take charge and be a leader. So that was the first time I sailed, and Bill's career went on to do many things. He is a true Renaissance man. He's done everything on the boat. He can do it all, and he has. Extremely hardworking, got very high ethical standards. He's loyal. He's a devoted husband and father, and held in very high regard with his friends, and by the way, all the America's Cup community. I said he was a good husband. The day he got married, I think we went sailing the next day, so it wasn't much of a honeymoon, but we went to the wedding, had a great sail, and maybe the next day after that, we put up a big black spinnaker that none of us really liked, but it had a lot of power, and the winch that Bill was trimming the sail from blew up, and one of the winch parts hit him in the mouth. And I looked over at Bill, and his mouth was all bloody, and I don't think he realized everything that had happened, but I looked at him and he didn't have any of his teeth. So Crystal, his wife, was on our tender that day with the kids, and Bill looked over at me and said, would you call Crystal? So I called up Crystal. I thought about it for a second, and I said, hey Crystal, do you want the good news or the bad news? And she said, well, the good news. And I said, it's good that you've had all your wedding pictures taken already. And then she said, you better give me the bad news now. And I said, well, Bill doesn't have a lot of teeth anymore. So I asked Dennis if he'd write a few lines about Bill, because obviously he's worked with him the most. So this is from Dennis Conner. Congratulations, Bill. I've had the privilege of working with you for over 40 years. And he says 9 America's Cup campaigns, but I know it's 8. His many years of America's Cup sailing with me began aboard 12 Meters Enterprise and Freedom. Rod Stevens trained Bill, which is amazing, to become in the mechanics of the 12. Hydraulics, pump systems, steering, winches, etc. It did not take long for Bill to become a port trimmer. He took over for John Wright when John moved to the main sheet in Australia. As time progressed, Bill took on management responsibilities, including helping with the design, building, and day-to-day operations. He was in charge of all aspects of our Stars and Stripes campaigns. Basically, I raised the money, and Bill spent it all. He did the work, and I got the credit. That's Dennis speaking. He ran a first-class operation, stayed within our small budget, believe me, it was small, which was hard to do, and we won 3 America's Cups. So Bill's career going through those 8 America's Cups is pretty incredible because he went from just trying to make the team to being a fantastic sail trimmer that Dennis never questioned. He did the pit, he could do almost everything on the boat. He did the mast at one time. He project managed the catamaran, which had a very intricate wing sail on it very early on. And then going into 92, 95, 2000, 2003, he managed the whole campaign. No one knows the AC better than Bill. Long overdue for the AC Hall of Fame, and no one deserves it more. Congrats, Bill. Welcome to the team. Yay.
On behalf of the selection committee of the America's Cup Hall of Fame, I induct Bill Trenkle. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tom. This is such a thrill for me to be inducted into the America's Cup Hall of Fame. I can't express how much it means to me. And thank you for all of the selection committee people that are here for making this happen. And thanks, Tom, for that great introduction. I know you had a few more stories you could have told, but it embarrassed me a little bit more, but you did just fine there. You clearly know me so well after 40 years, 8 America's Cup campaigns, and countless ocean racing miles. I can say with 100% certainty that I would not be standing here this evening had it not been for your friendship, guidance, and mentoring, and over the course of your passing on to me all your information and skills, and so much of your knowledge and your support and love of sailing. I'd also like to thank my wife, Crystal, for supporting my commitment to the America's Cup for 4 of my 8 campaigns. It was tough duty. I'd also like to thank my 2 sons, Tyler and Justin, for taking the time out of their busy lives to join us here this evening. My long-term time friend and skipper, Dennis Connor, was hoping to attend this evening. However, his recent back surgery made it impossible for him to make the trip to San Diego. However, he went beyond to make sure I knew how happy he was with my induction when we sailed together last week. He also asked me to pass on his congratulations to Dyer Jones and to Henri's family. He respected and loved both of them. I actually thought I was a hotshot sailor when in college, until I met the likes of Tom Whidden and Dennis Connor. I learned very quickly that these guys were at such a higher level of expertise that I could never, ever have imagined that sailing could be this way. Man, I was fortunate to fall in with these guys. Seems like only a few years ago when I was first in the New York Yacht Club's clubhouse in New York City, gazing upon the fabled America's Cup, sitting in the trophy room at the yacht club, and looking in the hallway, they had the transom of the eagle from the transom of America that started the whole thing in 1851 on the wall. It was just awe-inspiring to a young sailor like myself. Then, because Fort Schuyler, my college, was the sponsor of the Enterprise campaign in 1977, I got to see what a 12-meter up close and personal when they used the training ship's crane to lift Enterprise off the keel, loaded on a truck for transport to California. I'd never seen anything more beautiful in my life. The lines of that vintage 12-meter were just perfection. Unfortunately, 77 was not the year for Enterprise. I did get to visit a friend who worked on the Independence that year up in Newport, Rhode Island. He gave me a tour of the boat and the compound, and I was like a kid in a candy store, seeing all the equipment and how they ran those programs. It was just unbelievable for a young sailor to see that. Of course, Ted Turner, with Gary Jobson as tactician, won the Defender Series that year, and then the America's Cup. Gary was actually the first guy I knew in the America's Cup, because he graduated from Fort Schuyler as well, and was a coach of a rival sailing team from one of the other colleges, so he used to come over and help us whenever he could. So he was always inspirational for me. And my dream of the America's Cup, of actually sailing the America's Cup, one day finally began to come to fruition in 1978 when Dennis Conner came to Fort Schuyler to try to recruit some of the sailing team to join his America's Cup, he's going to have a two-boat, 12-meter America's Cup campaign. So he interviewed a bunch of the crew, and a few of us joined right up, and fortunately for myself and a few others, we were able to get selected to join this team up in Newport. And he just figured, it was a bunch of yes sir, no sir cadets that wouldn't expect any money, so it was perfect. So just like Bruno was saying, there's never enough money in America's Cup campaign. So if you can save some money, you would, and Dennis was very good at that. So I started full-time in 1979. Some started full-time in 79. I started in earnest after 1980 when I graduated. As Gary had said, it was a turning point for me, as Gary had said in his video, because I had a job offer with General Dynamics designing nuclear submarines, or I could have go with the America's Cup. And I chose to go with the America's Cup, much to the dismay of my parents. But in 1987, when we finally won, and we were at the ticker tape parade down Fifth Avenue, I was able to stand next to the America's Cup and with my parents and say, well, what do you think now? I did okay, right? So you all know how I made that decision. So they weren't too upset with me after that. To really understand why I made this my life, I have to go back to when I first showed up in Newport in 1980. Because I was an engineer, they asked me if I could fix the bilge pump on the 12-meter Freedom. She was an ultra-low freeboard boat and took on way too much water in heavy weather. So Reeves Potts, the project manager at the time, asked me to see what I could do. So after a day in the bilges, I figured out that there were way too many turns in the plumbing and way too much hose. And so I started fixing that. Then an older gentleman came down and joined me in the bilge, and he asked me what I was doing. I explained my plan, and he said, great, and gave me a few suggestions and left. Short time later, Reeves came back down to see how I was doing. I explained what I had done and told him about this old guy with these good ideas, and he said, you know who that old guy was? I said, no. And Reeves said, well, that was the legendary Rod Stevens of Sparkman Stevens, the designers of the boat. You dummy. all I could think was, thank God I didn't tell him to F off like I was thinking. Anyway, after that I was totally hooked. The sailing, the design, the construction, the boat sales, crew development, the strategy of the campaign, the more I learned from mentors like Dennis Conner, Tom Whitten, Halsey Herreshoff, John Marshall, Reeves Potts, the more I fell in love with every aspect of the America's Cup, and it became really what my life was about. It was became the epitome of what Dennis Conner calls committed to the commitment. One campaign led to the next, and each time I had a bigger role, which I relished. By the 2000 campaign in New Zealand, I was doing everything from sponsorship sales to contract negotiation, budget management, to design team management, while still sailing as a trimmer. It was always great to have Tom a phone call away when Dennis would call and have some kind of crazy idea, and I needed Tom's help to rein him in. The America's Cup opened all kinds of doors for me. I met 4 presidents, sailed with 3 kings, and a couple of princes, and got to meet Ronald Reagan in the White House Oval Office. It was really an unbelievable thrill. The friends that I've made along the way, and all those memories are the most important part of all, of course. So many friends from the past America's Cups are here tonight. It's so great to see them. I was really shocked how many, and going back to some of the people that I've sailed with and known for so many years, it's so great to see them here. Also, I'm really glad that I'm getting inducted with Dyer Jones. I've known Dyer for a long time, and he's somebody that I've worked with and admired for a very long time, so I'm honored to be inducted the same evening as he is. And also very pleased to be inducted with Henri Racamire. I know Bruno's he was inducted a few years ago for all the work he did with Louis Vuitton Cup, but of course Henri did so much to make that big decision back when Bruno put the contract in front of him so many years ago, and it changed the face of the America's Cup forever. So thank you very much, Henri's family, and thank you again, Bruno. So I also want to just thank everybody for coming, and I want to thank Oliver and the Rowan Birkin Center here. It's just an amazing place, as Tom said. It's like nothing I could ever imagine could be done. It's really fantastic, and thank you for hosting this event. Really appreciate it, and I'm very honored to be here and accepting the induction tonight. Thank you very much.